Hello again, I'm Greg Anderson. Boy, it was a nail-biter for sure. The Republican primary is what I'm talking about. That rock fight between Muratori and McRae, it appears, yielded one winner. As of this taping, McRae hasn't even conceded and may be asking for a recount. Regardless, Matt Muratori is in the lead, and his sights are now set on the general election and his opponent, Democratic State Representative Dylan Fernandes. Representative Fernandes has a credible record after serving Falmouth, Nantucket, Martha's Vineyard in the legislature since 2017, and now he is seeking your vote on November 5th. Let's go behind the websites, press releases, talking points, and let's get to know Dylan Fernandes. Welcome.
Pleasure, Greg.
How are you?
Good to be with you. I'm good. I'm good.
Welcome to Sandwich.
Of course. I mean, I've been spending a lot of time here. So we've been knocking on a ton of doors. We're actually opening an office this week in Sandwich, right next to Cafe Chew. So, boots on the ground here, a lot of talking to voters, and literally, opening an office here this week.
All right. Let's talk a little bit. We're going to talk a lot about your record and some of the things that is in your campaign materials that I want to learn a little bit more about. But tell me a couple things. You've been a state rep for 7 years.
It's my eighth.
Eighth year. Give me two things that most people do not know about Dylan Fernandes.
Oh, that's interesting. Well, one thing is that, my dad's family grew up in really extreme poverty here on the Cape. They came over from the Azores 4 generations ago. Life was never easy for them. He's one of 9. My grandmother would pour out bath water once a day for all the kids to bathe in.
Wow.
College was not an option for any of them. My father dropped out of high school, started a small landscaping company on Cape, worked to see it grow. Witnessed the reward of his hard work when I graduated from college and got a master's degree as well. Educational opportunities, my aunts and uncles and my father, all 9 of them, never had. And so, I think that's something that kind of background story about my family is something people don't know. And that's what motivated me to get into public office, to give back to the community and country and Commonwealth that's given me so much and that I love.
Yeah. Give me something else.
You want another one?
I want
so
another
here's one I don't talk about very often, but I actually have one of the rarest diseases in the world.
What?
I have an incredibly rare disease. So it's called fibroadipose vascular anomaly. Say that 5 times fast.
What?
And it is.
What is it?
It's an acronym called FAVA. So you can call it FAVA, but it's a malformation. It's a tumor, if you will, that causes people really debilitating pain. And so for most of my adult life, I've lived in really hard to deal with pain. It got to the point where in 2016, I was having a really hard time walking. And a lot of people in this community, they removed their limbs in order to deal with the pain of it.
Is your pain in your legs?
It is in my left leg. So what happened is it is such a rare disease that I got misdiagnosed twice for it and had procedures on something that was misdiagnosed as a child. And then this doctor in Boston at Children's Hospital actually discovered it as a new disease back in around 2010. And then fast forward to 2016, there was a paper that came out. It had an N, or a population, if you will, of 12 people and how it was treated. This is how incredibly rare disease I have is. It's like, there's qualifications for rare diseases. And this is like the rarest of the rarest.
Wow.
And so in 2017, I had it removed from my leg, and it's a 1.5 foot long scar that I have. It was several pounds of mass removed.
Wow.
And so, when people see me...
Did that help the pain?
Yes. Literally life-changing for me. So I went from being afraid of never walking again, and this stuff does make me emotional, being afraid of never walking again, to fast forward 9 months after getting the surgery, I ran a 5K. And so it's a really cool story. And I used to be an athlete growing up.
Wow.
So I I won the turkey trot as the fastest kid in town in 6th grade, claim to fame.
Yeah.
But so like it was a really tough process for me, losing that identity because of because I played varsity sports my entire life, and then I had to stop playing sports because I couldn't cope with the pain. So losing that identity, and then going through this whole ordeal, and I just feel for people who go. There's so many Americans that deal with pain every day, and so I know how incredibly hard that is. To then being able to kind of reclaim my identity in a way was a big thing for me. But I threw my back out last week because I'm missing half of my left eye, so I'm constantly dealing with health issues. Although the pain is significantly less to non-existent now, how completely out of alignment my body is something that's never going to change.
Yeah.
So look, I really, there's a lot of people out there, and this is something that informs my policy work, right? There are so many people out there who are struggling with a health issue or will at some point.
Yeah.
And I know how important that is to people. I know how important our healthcare system is to people, how expensive it can be, the uncertainty around it, the anxiety it can make people feel, and so that that in part really informs my policy and my day to day.
Shoot, I thought you were going to say something like, I have a dog that's a breed between a cat and a rat. But
I don't talk about it much, but it's the first time I've talked about it on the campaign trail, Greg, is with you right here.
Well, thank you for sharing that. My ultimate goal is, may I call you Dylan?
Of course.
My ultimate goal, Dylan, in these conversations is to, like I said, get behind kind of the main talking points. I want to understand and help people understand who you really are, as if we're sitting in my living room and talking, and I can see the emotion in you, and I don't know how old you are, but you're much younger than me, and I think of how identity and health and fear and chronic pain, I mean, that's a lot of stuff to carry around, so good for you. I'm happy for you.
But look,
I'm happy for you.
Everyone's carrying something, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't mean you're carrying this incredibly rare disease, but everyone's carrying some healthcare issue, some mental health issue, something. And so I think it's just about, it's helped me just be more empathetic to people and identify and connect with people who are struggling. Doesn't even have to be a healthcare issue, but struggling in any aspect of life.
Yeah. Let's talk about the campaign.
Sure.
It looks today, if we were to look at hard numbers, minus a recount that may happen, that Matt Muratori and you will be facing off in the general election. If that is to be the case, and he is in the lead, which is why I'm kind of putting him into this context, you both are state representatives, generally about the same amount of time in office. Neither of you have been a senator before. What, aside from Republican, Democrat, what differentiates you? Give me kind of the top three that differentiates you from Matt Muratori.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I just have a much more robust legislative record than Matt does. I've passed 30 bills into law. I'm the only person running in this race to pass statewide legislation. Yeah. I've passed 7 statewide bills. My opponent hasn't passed any in a decade. And I've brought back way more funding, and that's so important for our often overlooked region, especially Sandwich, but really everywhere from Pembroke down to Falmouth and the district. This is an often overlooked area, and we need people who can bring home funding, who can get bills passed that are specific to our region. I'm the only candidate that's done that, and so. Just for one example, this past legislative session, I brought in over $2 million in funding. My opponent brought in just over $100,000. I mean, there's like huge differences when it comes to delivering for the district. And I think another issue to your point is.
But if I could just interrupt you, isn't your district is larger than his?
No, same size.
Same size. Martha's Vineyard, Nantucket, and Falmouth is the same size of what he has in Plymouth?
Yeah, every single district has to be apportioned just constitutionally as the same amount of population.
Got it.
Yeah.
How many of those 30 that you're talking about were you primary sponsor of?
All of them.
All of them? Okay. What stands out the most when you talk about those 30 and you pass those? Because I know you're really making that a point in your material that out of the 7 years, 8 years, that you have those 30 bills that you've passed. Why is that significant? And give me a couple of highlights of what you have done.
Well, look, it's not easy getting things passed through the legislature. So that's that's something that I'm proud of. Delivering for the people of the Plymouth and Barnstable district is going to be so important in this race. And so, I'll talk about the first statewide bill I passed through the House was legislation, and this is right after Donald Trump and I got elected on the same night in 2016, which was a roller coaster of emotions there. But then, one of the first things that he did as president was pull our country out of the Paris Climate Agreement. This important, agreement that is our best shot at protecting our environment. And so one of the first things I did as state representative, one of the first bills I filed, and then within 9 months of filing it, got it passed into law, was legislation signing Massachusetts onto the Paris Climate Agreement, and sending a message that a handful of climate deniers, people who are against the environment in DC, don't speak for the people of the Cape, don't speak for the people of Plymouth, don't speak for the people of the Commonwealth.
When you talk about your policies and your approach, you are a Democrat. Your opponent has said that you are far left. You're an extremist on the far left. How do you speak to that?
Well, it makes me laugh. I've always been a pragmatist. I've always focused on getting things done for the district, and that's why I've gotten so much more things done than my opponent. And Progressive Massachusetts has a scorecard. If you want to know what my grade is, it's a D-. So it's a little laughable. I don't know. You're gonna have to ask them. So it's a little laughable to me that I think they would take issue with that characterization. And look, my opponent, we're not really focused on him in this race, to be honest with you. Like, what we're really focused on is the issues that voters care about. And there's some big things in our area. Affordability is a huge issue. Lack of affordable housing on the Cape and in Plymouth County is driving people out. It's incredible. Most people in my generation, sorry, I touched the mic. Most people in my generation have given up even trying to find a home, but seniors who want to downsize, working families who want to stay here, it's impossible. And so, we need more housing for working people. If we don't, lack of affordability is going to erode our communities far faster than the ocean ever will.
So let's talk about housing. Let's say you get the keys to the Senate seat and it's yours. You've got this term to now do what you want to do. What would you do as it relates to helping on that affordable housing issue? You can't boil the ocean and solve the problems overnight, but what specifically will you do to help to make things more affordable from a housing perspective?
Well, there's a lot to do here. One thing that we passed recently was the seasonal communities designation that we carved out specifically for the Cape and specifically for tourist regions. And this is really, really important because we have a different housing market than a lot of other places. Because our wages here generally don't keep pace with some of the state median income wages, but the housing prices are so out of whack that people can't afford the market rate. And so we're going to be using in the coming years the seasonal housing designation, which we just got done, to really support that missing middle.
What does
on
it do?
Cape Cod.
What does that law do?
Well, it does several things. One is it creates an office to have special regulations for our region. And so that's what we're going to work on, is making sure we have tailored special regulations that fit our really unique community. And that's really important here because we're different. This isn't one size fits all, right? And we need special regulations for the unique parts of our district. And so so that's one big piece. The other piece is around giving preference for municipal workers. that's really important here. I can't underscore how hard it is for our firefighters, our teachers, our police officers to be able to find housing. And so getting that preference is really, really important. And the last part I'll raise on this is I'm the only person running to actually support this. And my opponent is the only person, both Democrat and Republican, to vote against the housing bill.
So how are you going to, if I'm a police officer and I just heard you say that,
yeah.
I'm thinking, oh wow,
yeah.
I might have some special treatment to help me with that housing in a place that I might not otherwise be able to afford. What does that look like?
It looks like municipalities being able to build housing with state dollars and other types of funds that are particular for municipal workers, rather than, and you usually see this now where because of different types of housing law, it just has to go to whoever qualifies first. And so this is giving municipal employees that special treatment, and I think that's really important for the sustainability of our workforce in our towns. The other part that, one piece I've been working on for a number of years is a first-time homebuyers savings account. Mm-hmm. And so I filed this, and we want to get this done, and this is kind of, we've done some big housing pieces, and I'm the only person to support the big housing pieces for this region. But one thing that hasn't been included that I want to include is to do a tax-exempt first-time homebuyers savings account, because it's so hard to afford and put money down for that initial payment. Mm-hmm. And if you don't, then you have to pay mortgage insurance, which is literally just giving away free money to the banks.
Yeah.
And so
they're happy to take it.
They are.
Happy to take it.
Greg. So this is another additional piece.
Back in December, Governor Maura Healey, in her endorsement of your candidacy, said, quote, "You have been a leader in bringing clean energy jobs to the region and protecting abortion access." Let's break that down a little bit. How have you been a leader in bringing clean energy jobs to the Cape and Islands?
Yeah, so we worked really hard to get this facility up on Martha's Vineyard that's going to bring 50 to 60 good-paying year-round jobs to service the wind farms. And so that's really important. Like, 'cause there's a lot of jobs around this that are construction, right? But those are just a year, 2 year, 3 year jobs. Mm-hmm. This is a 30 plus year sustainable commitment, and these are good paying year round jobs in a highly seasonal area. And so that's one huge piece.
What specifically have you done to protect abortion access?
Well, so when I first got elected,
she's calling you a leader.
Yeah. Well, when I first got elected, women on the Cape and women on Martha's Vineyard did not have access to women's reproductive care. They actually had a lot of women, the closest place to get care was Providence, Rhode Island. And so they'd have to think of you're in Provincetown, think of you're on the Vineyard, you have to take a day off work, probably 2. Yeah. Pay hundreds of dollars if you're getting a ferry or whatever to get there. A level of barrier that you'd see in like a Mississippi or an Alabama existed for women on the Cape and women on the Vineyard. And so we worked with and pushed for and got legislative funding to Health Imperatives, which is a nonprofit that's served here for a number of years. And then for the first time ever last summer, they started providing that care to women on the Cape and women on the Vineyard.
So we're talking about access to those services, not necessarily. I mean, mass law protects reproductive rights. It's not that you have been given credit for. It's access.
Well, I think it's both. I mean, I'm also the only person running to support the Roe Act for women's reproductive health care in the state. If some other people had their way, and there's people, my opponent being one of them, who didn't support that, then that the landscape wouldn't look like it is in Massachusetts. But look, the women of our state aren't going to go back when it comes to abortion access, and it's something that I'm going to continue to make sure that women have reproductive freedom and that government isn't interfering with their healthcare decisions.
Falmouth, because Falmouth is part of your your district right now. You know the Vineyard and Nantucket, but there are 8 towns in the Plymouth-Barnstable Senatorial District, one of which is Falmouth. The other 7 are, I guess I would say, new to you. They're not in your existing district. So that would be Pembroke, Kingston, Plimpton, Plymouth, Bourne, Sandwich, and Mashpee. What have you done? What has your process been during this campaign, or maybe even before, for you to actually kind of go behind the scenes and really understand what is happening in these communities? Because issues in Sandwich are not the same issues in Kingston, and a voter there will look at you differently than perhaps a voter here in Sandwich if we feel you're really listening to what we need in our community. What's your process been, and what are you taking away from all of these other communities that are essentially new to you?
Yeah, well, a lot of these communities aren't new, right? Like I grew up here. I'm a 4th-generation resident of the district. I spent a lot of time in these communities, just not in my role as a legislator, just as a resident of the district. Like I'm playing men's league hockey tonight in Bourne, like that's, I'm just of this community, right? So, but what are we doing more than that? Like a whole lot, right? Like our campaign has knocked on over 16,000 doors since we started running. And so we're literally showing up at people's doorstep, and I'm doing this several days a week, knocking on their door, having a candid conversation with them about the issues, and hearing about their concerns, what they aspire our community to be like, and things like that. And I think that's really important, because I think that's how campaigns should be run, and elected officials should, run for office, because you're literally just having conversations with your constituents. And that, to me, is the most important thing in, building consensus. And also just, when I ran for office in 2016, I take those conversations to the State House, and that informs me as a legislator better than anything else, is talking to people, being with people, hearing directly their cares and concerns. So in Sandwich, we have wastewater, we have taxes. Those are some of the issues, beach renourishment. Give me some examples of, say, Plimpton. What is a homeowner in Plimpton most concerned about? Well, Plimpton's an incredibly rural community, right? And so I'm actually co-chair of the Rural Caucus in the legislature. And so there's a lot of issues there around farming, around land use, that are really important. And generally speaking, most voters care about a lot of the same issues, no matter where they are. So, and those issues, and I hear them time and time again, are around affordability for housing, for healthcare, for childcare. They're around protecting our environment, making sure that we have good water quality. Both parts of our district, both the Cape and the Plymouth side, sit atop a sole source aquifer. So people really want to make sure that water is protected, that they have good water quality. These are all kind of important things that transcend. And then, of course, there are some very localized issues where Plimpton's a lot more rural, a lot more agricultural focused than some of the other towns. What about Kingston, Plymouth? Yeah, Kingston, a big issue there is around water quality, actually. Like their watershed issues are really important. I spent a lot of time talking with some of the folks that are dealing with water quality issues in Kingston. So they want to make sure that they have good, clean water. They want to make sure that they're not getting their water resources depleted from other communities. That's a really important issue there. And they're also concerned about the high cost of housing and living in the area. Yeah, that's kind of a Massachusetts thing, it seems, just trying to find affordable housing somewhere. Like you're saying about first-time homeowners, the younger generation, it's tough. It does stretch across all communities. Yeah. Let's talk about immigration. It was on Martha's Vineyard that we had this
plane that flew in with immigrants from Florida. Thank you, Governor DeSantis, for that. But that's your district. Can you tell me what your takeaway is of that? And I'm really looking at it from, what did Dylan Fernandes think and feel when that happened? Because it obviously it was kind of a lightning situation, but representative of a major national issue that we have.
Yeah, well,
what are we going to do with these people?
I have a lot of thoughts on it, but I'll try to be concise. I mean, look, there's no question that we have a crisis at the border, that we need immigration reform in this country, that it is, there are big issues there that absolutely require legislation so we get a handle on this. But rounding people up without telling them, lying to them about where they're going, selling them a place on a lie, not alerting a single local official that you're going to take people on several different planes all the way across the country, not tell these 50 families where they're going, and put them in a place surrounded by water that they've never been to before. I think that is one of the more cowardly acts that I've ever seen someone do. And I think regardless of how you feel on this issue, treating anyone as a political pawn for your own personal political gain is a cowardly act. And we found out about this not because we got alerted to it, right? We found out about it because he went on Tucker Carlson to announce it, and so it was purely a political move. I think it was, I think it's really, I thought it was really disgusting. And look, I agree that we need immigration reform. That we absolutely need that, and there's no question about that. I was really hopeful that the biggest immigration reform bill that the feds were going to do in generations was going to pass and actually bring meaningful reform, slow the flow of immigration, reform the asylum process. By the way, give states like Massachusetts funds to help us with what we're dealing with. And so, the fact that that didn't pass Congress and President Trump was opposed to it, I think that ends up hurting us, right? And I'm just hopeful that Congress can get its act together and pass meaningful reform.
So as a senator, what will your to-do list look like when it comes to immigration?
Yeah, well, it's an important issue for us, right? One of the troubles, Greg, is that all the laws pretty much are squarely at the federal level, right? So the state doesn't have any control over the border, to say the least. We don't have any control over visas. We don't have any control over refugee status. We don't have any control over these issues. So we got to advocate, yes, for the feds to step up, and we got to talk to our own congressional representatives to say, hey, this is impacting us. We need you guys to step up. And then also we need to manage this here. And so it was tough, but we ended the right to shelter in Massachusetts, right? Just because it was costing our state too much money. And so this right to shelter law, now it's ended. And so now you only get a finite amount of time in our shelter system. And then if you hit work requirements, you get a couple more months, but eventually there's a hard stop. That's something that we've had to adjust to save our state money.
During the run-up to the primary, the big question was over on the Republican side, and both of those candidates sat where you're sitting right now and talked with me, and clearly they were going after each other to the primary. But the bigger picture is, which one of those can take out Dylan Fernandes, in the general election? When you're Dylan Fernandes, you've got the hard right Trump in one candidate, you've got kind of a Charlie Baker Republican in the other. It looks like he is going to be your challenger in the general election. How do you look at the Republican profile? And I know I just met you, but I have a feeling you're going to say I focus just on me, not on them. But really, you've got a Republican climate here where people are going to cast you as far left extreme, all of that, from a Republican machine that is desperately trying to capture more seats in the House and the Senate.
Yeah.
How do you fight up against a Republican challenger in today's climate?
Yeah, I mean, look, there's actually not a big difference between the two, and so we haven't spent a lot of time thinking about it, but they both are big Trump supporters and have pledged that on their campaign trail, and so again, we're going to take on whoever they're both Trump supporters, so whoever that Republican is, both are anti-women's right to reproductive freedom. So in my view, there's not a big difference between the two, and we're just going to be focused on ourselves, our own campaign, to your point, because that's what's important, and that's what voters care about, Greg. They don't, this kind of horse race stuff, they don't care about. What they care about is things that our campaign is all about, which is, yes, protecting women's right to reproductive freedom. They care about workforce housing, which is completely out of reach. They care about healthcare issues. They care about public education funding. That's a big difference in this race. I've always been supportive of additional funding and support for our students and teachers. So we're going to keep working on these environmental issues. I'm the only person to have be in a position of leadership and been the vice chair of the Committee on the Environment for the last couple of years. Before that, which is a huge issue. Yeah. Before that was the vice chair of the Committee on Tourism, Arts and Culture. That's probably a big thing for our district is our arts and culture industry, and of course, the backbone of our economy and what drives economic development here is our tourism industry. So, these are things that I've worked on for a number of years. These are things that I'm passionate about. And look, I think these are things that the voters actually care about.
So the primaries typically would bring out the hard right, hard left to vote. The independents, the people are like, I'll just wait to the general election and see who my final pick is. Then I think I'll weigh in a little bit more. The independent voter is who you need to appeal to. How do you appeal to that? I'm not interested in the far left. I can't stand the far right. I'm somewhere in the middle. I'm actually a little irritated that we're in such a divisive culture. I want someone who is going to speak to me on my independent mindset and not talk over me or around me. How do you appeal? How does Dylan Fernandes get the independent voter vote?
Yeah, well, look, I think people want someone who cares about the issues that they care about. And that does come back to protecting the environment, protecting water quality. It does come back to childcare, which a lot of people are staying home, leaving the workforce to take care of kids because that's so expensive. A lot of people care about this housing crisis. That's going to be, and that's something I've worked on and have a record on. And look, a lot of people, we're communities that are often overlooked, Greg. And so people also want someone who can deliver for them at the State House. And I'm the only candidate to pass statewide legislation. I've passed more bills by far than anyone else running. I've brought home more money to the communities than anyone else running. But also, I'm not afraid to stand up to my own party. I'm one of 4, maybe 5 Democrats, a handful, to vote for term limits on the longest serving speaker in Massachusetts history, because I believe that concentration of power into one person's hands is not good for Massachusetts, isn't good for Plymouth, isn't good for Sandwich, isn't good for our district, right? And so I don't mind standing up to my own party when I think it's the right thing to do.
We've got Markey. We've had Kennedy, we've had Warren. I mean, we have people that have been in power a long time on the Democratic ticket. Are you suggesting that maybe some of those guys shouldn't have stayed as long to the party as they did?
I think that, I think 2 things on this. One, I think term limits for leadership positions is a good thing. I really do. I think if you're, whether you're the Senate president, whether you're the Speaker of the House, that's a lot of power. And over time, power concentrates, right?
Yeah.
And so I don't like that. I don't think that's good for democracy. And so what I want is term limits on people in those positions of power. And look, I'm also fine with, we had the oldest presidential nominee in history, and now we also have the oldest president. He left, and now we still have the oldest presidential nominee in history.
Yeah.
There are, there are restrictions on whether you can serve on a Wall Street board or a company board after some point. I think there could be some restrictions there.
So term limits, just to be clear, you're talking about term limits in roles once elected, not term limits of you can't be senator for 55 years.
What's the question?
I just want to clarify that you believe that term limits of being Senate president, for example, you
term
support
limit.
that.
Absolutely.
But being a senator, where you can be we have term limits on being president. You can't be president for more than 2 terms, 8 years. That's not the case in state or Senate or. That's not what you're talking about. You're not suggesting that term limits of elected officials needs to be curtailed.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm open to it, but I think you got to do. I'm totally open to it, and believe me, I will be term limited myself. I can guarantee you that. I'm not someone who's going to do this job for 20 plus years, and I've term limited myself in my current role to just 8 years, Greg. So, but look, I think and I'm open to it, but I think the main issue. And I do think this is really important, is when you're talking about term limits, I really think, and we see this, where power concentrates over a long period of time, especially in these leadership roles. And I think that, that's a good place to start.
End on this note. Why should I vote for you?
Well, look, for a number of reasons, but I'll start with this. I am the only person running to support women's reproductive freedom. I'm working on the housing crisis, the only person running to support the Affordable Homes Act with specific carve-outs for the Cape. And I have a record on protecting our environment. I passed several environmental bills. I'm vice chair of the committee on the environment. And I'm a lifelong resident, fourth generation resident of the Plymouth and Barnstable district. I know it here. I love it here. This is my community. It's given me and my family so much. And I'm just looking to give back.
Dylan Fernandes, State Representative, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. Do not forget to vote, my friends.
That's right.
Do that. September 5 is the general election. You will see his name on the ballot. You will see someone from the Republican, whoever that is, for Senate, but get out and vote. Hopefully this has been a helpful conversation to you, my friends out there, and I'll see you soon.